Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kyiv, because today we got the first details and about possible minerals deal between the United States of America and Ukraine. Kyiv and Washington have reached a minerals deal, with Ukraine set to sign an agreement on jointly developing its resources, including oil and gas. The US dropped demands for $500 billion in potential revenue, boosting hopes for stronger ties and long-term security commitments. The final Ukraine-US minerals deal, dated February 24, would create a fund where Kyiv contributes 50% of proceeds from future state-owned resources monetization. Existing Naftogaz and Ukrnafta, the richest companies of Ukraine, revenues are excluded. Notably, US security guarantees are absent, with Kyiv terms on ownership and stake left for follow-up talks. Zelensky may travel to Washington in the coming weeks for a deal signing ceremony with Trump, the Financial Times reports. So as you can see, the most important demand from Zelensky's side was he's ready to sign everything, including probably to become 52nd or 51st state of the United States of America when talking about Ukraine. But the most important, let's say, demand from his side was to have a ceremony, have a seal signing a ceremony with Trump. So he wanted, and he still wants to legitimate himself without elections. He wants to confirm, he wants to force everybody to believe that until war goes, he can't make any elections on the territory of Ukraine. But of course, the United States of America and the Americans are very smart, so that's why they asked Zelensky to receive some papers or adopt another law that will confirm that you are legitimate. So for these purposes, Zelensky and the parliament of Ukraine decided to adopt an additional law, and yesterday this law was adopted. So what is this law about? Ukraine's parliament, including the opposition, voted anonymously to affirm that Zelensky's mandate as president remains legitimate, that no elections can be held because of war started by Putin, and that a general election will be held as soon as the war ends. So this is the law that was adopted by the parliament of Ukraine, which probably gives Zelensky some legitimacy that he can use to sign any agreement with Trump. Furthermore, this situation with elections was already commented by Elon Musk. The Ukraine parliament once again passes a resolution affirming Zelensky's legitimacy, the constitutionally mandated requirement that keeps him in power through the duration of the war due to martial law. Elon Musk wrote in his social network that holding an election. You know that this is very interesting situation, because when talking about a constitution of any country, maybe not about any country, but obviously when talking about the United States of America, Russia, Ukraine, France, Germany, when talking about democratic countries, there is one important paragraph, and this paragraph related to the source. Who is the source of power? So every single constitution had this paragraph where you can find exactly what is the source of power. For example, when talking about Russia, there is just one source of power, and when talking about Russia, this is people. So the people who are living in Russia is the only source of power, is the only source that can determine whether you are president or not. I believe that we can find the same paragraph in France, Germany, Poland, the United States of America, and you need to understand that there is the same paragraph in the constitution of Ukraine where it's written that Ukrainian people is the only source of power that can determine whether you are president or not. And by this voting and by this law and by this order that was adopted by the Ukraine parliament, Zelensky forced the only legitimate force in Ukraine to make a crime, because this affirmation, this mandate and these votings in Ukraine parliament is a crime, because this event breaks the Ukrainian constitution. So this is the situation, and this is the reality the Ukrainians are living in. Anyway, today also we got several statements by the Ukrainian deputies. The war will not end in 2025. If the West sends only 30,000 peacekeepers, they will be the first to flee when the Russians attack again. So that was stated by Secretary of the Rada Defense Committee. And this is about whether the Ukrainians and the Western countries are planning to do anything regarding the European forces or NATO forces on the territory of Ukraine. So anyway, today, not today, but by the 28th of February of 2025, Zelensky will travel to the United States of America, where he will sign agreement with Donald Trump. And most likely this is going to be the beginning of the end of the special military operation. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, because despite agreements and talks between Ukraine, United States of America, Russia, and United States of America, the armed forces of Russian Federation continued their offensive operation. And probably the most important updates during the previous 24 hours we got from the Sudzha direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. The sources reported that at least 4 or 5 settlements just during the previous 48 hours came under complete Russian control. We are talking about the northern salient. This pocket was completely cut by the Russians, according to different sources. For example, the official Telegram channel of the group of forces North stated that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to secure the territory of Pogribki and the territory of the settlement by the name of Orlovka. So these are two settlements close to each other. When talking about different mappers like neutral mappers or pro-Russian mappers or any other sources, they reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions even much further in the direction of the settlement of Staraya Sorochina. So let's compare the map to understand how exactly the map has been changed. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 25th of February, when the first reports start appearing in the internet. So as you can see, the settlements like Staraya Sorochina, Novaya Sorochina, Orlovka, and Pogribki were almost under complete control of the armed forces of Russian Federation. But as for the beginning of the 26th of February of 2025, we see that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. So now let's compare and let's calculate the distances. According to pro-Russian sources, during the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their positions for another 3 or 4 kilometers in the southern direction. And currently, according to information we have, the clashes are taking place in the northern part of the settlement of Staraya Sorochina. So most likely the Ukrainians will be able to slow down the Russians, but they will be able to do this on the area of the settlement of Malaya Loknya, where we can find the former prison for women. So but it obviously will take maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and then the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back further in the direction of Sudzha, because the Russians, as a result of offensive operation and according to different mappers during the previous night, also managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Lebedevka. And this is very important because now the Russians are trying to get as close as possible to the main supply lines between the city of Sudzha and the northern pocket that was halved by the Russians during the previous night. So we see that the news is tightening around the Ukrainian positions. Furthermore, we can see a very powerful, very huge activity of the armed forces of Russian Federation in the vicinity of Ruskaya Porochная. So we expect that in the very near future, maybe this day, maybe this upcoming days, the Russians are about to begin another offensive operation with the purpose to get as close as possible to the main supply line towards the settlement of Yuzhny from this direction. So we see that the northern pocket is about to be cut by the Russians, and maybe in 2-3 weeks, everything that is located, let's say, to the north or to the east, to the top of this red line would be cut by the Russians and taken. Furthermore, during the previous night, we got reports that the Russians finished the clearing of the settlement of Kurilovka. Now everybody from the Russian side and from pro-Ukrainian side are waiting for just one thing: another report of the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, where probably this information will be confirmed. So if this information is correct, then the battle for the city of Sudzha has begun, because there are no more settlements around, just several villages that are already a part of Sudzha agglomeration. So this situation probably has started due to complete control over the road N07. I'll remind you that during the previous days we got lots of reports from pro-Russian resources that they managed to establish complete control over this main supply road N07 between Yunakiivka and Sudzha, that Ukrainians suffer significant losses. For example, today I read a very interesting article about the situation in this area, and just one FPV drone squad of the armed forces of Russian Federation in the Sudzha direction every day destroy from 10 till 15 vehicles. It's amazing. This number are very huge. So per month, the Russians are about to destroy 500,000 vehicles that Western countries need to send and provide almost every single day. And we know that Ukrainians don't have these possibilities. Furthermore, the source reported that the Ukrainians are about to finish the building of a defense belt on the Ukrainian side of the border. So as soon as Ukrainians finish these, let's say, constructions, then they will try to retreat from Suzy direction. And this is the only reason why the Ukrainians are trying to hold their positions in this pocket, because the defense belts are not being prepared by the Ukrainians yet. Now let's discuss the situation on other directions, and probably the most interesting updates are coming from the city of Toretsk. Today, lots of channels, lots of pro-Ukrainian sources published very interesting video that as a result of counterattack, the Ukrainians managed to restore control over significant territories in the northern part. So in this video, we can see how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians that were attacking and storming this building. Based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything because as for now, it's not so many, there's not so much information. One thing we know for sure, that most likely the Russians don't have 100% control over the northern part. Furthermore, we're sure for 100% that the Russians have problems with personnel, with servicemen. They don't have enough of forces to control the entire city of Toretsk. And this morning there was another very interesting article published by the Russian side that the Russians who were responsible for the Toretsk offensive operation were forced by their commanders to announce the victory for the city. When there were still blocks, when there were still streets and buildings that remained under complete Ukrainian control. So now we understand that most likely the northern part, the area that goes in the direction of Konstantinovka, maybe is in the gray zone or under complete Ukrainian control. Most likely in the very near future we will adjust the map and we will color some blocks of the city of Toretsk back again under Ukrainian control. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dnipro direction and Novopavlovka direction. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take another tree line and some fields between Nadezhdinka and Preobrazhenka. We see that the Russians currently are trying to outflank the Ukrainians in the area of Preobrazhenka from the north. So most likely they will continue advancing further in the western direction with the purpose to cut the Ukrainians in Preobrazhenka from supply and support. Now let's discuss the situation in Andreevka fortified area. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to finish the battle for the city, for the town of Andreevka. We got several geolocations from the most southwestern part of the settlement and from the most northwestern part of the same settlement as well. So based on lots of episodes and the video that we've just seen, we have adjusted the map in this part of Andreevka and in this part. As for the settlement of Konstantinovka, there are still very heavy clashes. With Russians maybe are going to take the settlement under complete control in the very near future, but as for now we see that Ukrainians still show resistance, significant resistance to the armored forces of Russian Federation. Now let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction. Today, according to information we have, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to take the settlement of Skudne in pincers. So the Russians managed to improve their positions on the outskirts, and most likely during the next several days, this village will be taken by the Russians as well. So we see that the situation for the armed forces of Ukraine in this area is getting worse and worse. And that's it for the short video on military summary. Channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.